Let's go to Richard Marles. The Defence Minister is live in Canberra.
We've seen this morning from the Point Loma Naval Base in San Diego represents one of the biggest decisions that an Australian government has ever made. This is the biggest defence procurement. In fact, it's the biggest procurement in Australia's history. Australia will now be just the 7th country to operate a nuclear-powered submarine. And this represents the biggest leap in our military capability since the end of the Second World War. Arguably, it's the biggest leap in our military capability in our history. We often describe ourselves as living in the most complex strategic landscape since the end of the Second World War. We say this because we watch the global rules-based order being placed under enormous pressure in Eastern Europe, but also in the Indo-Pacific. And we are witnessing the biggest conventional military build-up that we have seen since the end of the Second World War. And it's happening within our region. And it is not Australia which is doing that. And we need to respond to this. A failure to do so would see us be condemned by history. As a trading island nation, so much harm can be done to us before ever setting foot upon our shores. And so it's fundamentally important for our nation that we have the ability to project, and to project with impact. And a long-range, nuclear-powered, capable submarine will be at the heart of Australia's future projection. It will enable us to hold adversaries at risk further from our shores. But the true intent of this submarine, of this capability, is to provide for the peace and stability of our region. Because when you look at our geography, the defence of Australia is not relevant unless there is security within our region. And so we want everyone to understand, the Australian people, but our friends and neighbours, that at the heart of our strategic intent is to make our contribution to the collective security of our region and to the maintenance of the global rules-based order, which is so fundamental to Australia's future. And it's for that reason that we are acquiring a nuclear-powered submarine. In making this acquisition, it will enable us to hand on to our children and to our grandchildren a country which is much more self-reliant and much more able to take care of ourselves in the very difficult future ahead. Now, the cost is significant, but I would be quick to add that the sort of numbers that you have seen cost a capability of government out to the mid-2050s, and you can look at a whole lot of abilities of government beyond defence, which if you cost it out to the mid-2050s would have similarly large numbers. But this is a very significant cost. The best estimate of the cost, and to be honest, the most transparent and honest estimate of this cost is 0.15% of GDP through the life of the program. And that needs to be seen against a defence budget which is currently running at 2% of GDP and is expected to grow to 2.2% of GDP. So for that 0.15%, we completely transform the capability of the Australian Defence Force and the potency of the Australian Defence Force. This is an investment in our nation's security, it is an investment in our nation's economy, and it is an investment that we cannot afford not to make. A precondition of the whole program with AUKUS is to be making sure that everything we are doing is compliant with our non-proliferation treaty obligations. And we are really confident that in this arrangement we are establishing the very highest bar in relation to our NPT obligations, and we have been working very closely with the International Atomic Energy Agency in respect of this. In this respect, the sealed nuclear reactor is our friend, because by virtue of having a sealed reactor, we can provide assurance in respect of every piece of nuclear material through the life cycle of the nuclear material. We are making a commitment that we will dispose of the nuclear reactor. That is a significant commitment to make. This is going to require a facility to be built in order to do that disposal. Obviously, that facility will be remote from populations, and today we are announcing that that facility will be on defence land, current or future. Now, to be clear, the first of the naval reactors that we will be disposing of will not happen until the 2050s. But within the year, we will announce a process by which this facility will be identified. We are also a proud signatory to the Treaty of Rarotonga, and that is a treaty which commits Australia to not operate nuclear weapons from our territory. Now, it's been said a number of times today that this is a conventionally armed nuclear-powered submarine, so Australia has no intention of operating nuclear weapons from our soil. But we reiterate and reaffirm today that in every part of this arrangement, Australia will be maintaining its obligations under the Treaty of Rarotonga, and that includes through the US and UK rotation at HMAS Sterling from the late 2020s. There has been a huge diplomatic effort which has underpinned the announcement today, and that's been going on for months, but it's particularly been going on over the last week. Between myself, the Minister for the Pacific in this context, the Foreign Minister, and indeed the Prime Minister. We've made more than 60 calls to regional and world leaders within the Pacific, within ASEAN, within our Five Eyes partners. And I'll let those countries speak for themselves, but I am very grateful for the response that we have received. I particularly in this context want to mention France, given all that occurred 18 months ago. I spoke with my French counterpart, Sébastien Lecornu, last Tuesday. Took him through this announcement in detail, so there are no surprises. And I'm really, in turn, grateful to Sébastien for the hearing that he gave me. One of the things I would want to make clear is AUKUS is not a new alliance. AUKUS is a technology sharing arrangement between Australia, the US and the UK. In an operational sense, we are building our relationship with France with a much greater tempo of military exercises, with much greater access to our bases on the Australian continent, but also French bases in the Pacific and indeed in the Indian Ocean. Ours is a relationship which is growing in strength. And I'm really pleased about my personal relationship with Sébastien Lecornu, which for me typifies the warmth of the relationship that we have with France. We're in a good place with France, and that matters because really France is effectively our closest neighbour. Finally, if you'll indulge me, I just want to say thank you to the hundreds of people who have put in a power of work to get to this moment. To Admiral Mead and the task force and all those who are working within the task force who have put in countless hours over the last 18 months and particularly in recent times. To those in the Department of Defence, those in the Australian Defence Force, in Foreign Affairs, in Treasury, in Finance, in PM&C. And also those in our offices here in this building, my office, Pat's office, the Minister for Foreign Affairs office, the offices of the Treasurer and the Finance Minister, and of course the PMO. A lot of midnight oil has been burnt over the course of the last few weeks, and I am really humbled by the effort that has been put in to bring this to this moment today.